Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with another episode of Receivables Roundtable. Today, I have the opportunity to chat with my good friend, Mr. Gary Tier from Forwarders List. Gary and I have been working together for, I guess, about 8 years now. We originally met really personally on the membership committee for RMAI, and I think it's just a testament to what can happen when you actually actively participate in the associations in which you're members. So how you doing today, Gary?
I'm good. How are you?
Can't complain. It's another day in paradise down here in South Florida. I know that pretty much everybody in the industry already knows you, but why don't we kick it off? Can you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you got to the seat you're in today?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to piggyback on your comment about the committee with RMAI, associations are a big part of what we do. We might circle back to it a little later, but I encourage anybody out there to really, whatever sector of the business you're in, to get involved and not just show up or be a member, but volunteer to do some work. And it's a great way to meet people, obviously professionally, but friends too, right? A lot of my best friends now are through all these things. And you don't think when you're joining a committee that you're not there to make friends, but that's just kind of what happens. So,
Sure.
So about me, I graduated college and thought I wanted to go to law school. Was going to take a year off. My mom told me, don't come home till you have a job. I started looking around. I saw an opportunity to work for a publishing company on a legal directory, and took it, right? Because I sort of didn't care. I was going to do law school. This is just for a little, for a year to get a little experience. And I went to work for the Forwarders List of Attorneys. We were owned by, at the time, Commonwealth Business Media. They were a few $100 million a year in revenue. We were a very tiny piece of what they did. And over the next 5 years, I realized quickly I didn't want to go to law school. The idea of going back to school did not work.
I understand.
But yeah, the plan didn't make sense. And then at the same time, I loved work. I mean, I was 22 making nothing, and I was the first one there and the last one to leave. I just really found it. I loved it. And then I started going to conferences and meeting all these cool people. And I'm like, wait, you could get paid to go do this? So a couple years in, my boss leaves. The parent company doesn't understand what we do, which could be a whole nother separate session.
Oh, sure.
And I start to see that there's this opportunity. And one of the opportunities was they were not investing in RMA at the time, debt buyers, or NARCA and NCBA. We were only doing commercial business. So I went to the owner and told him I wanted to buy the business. I was very young and didn't really have anything, but we had a good relationship. He worked with me and I bought the business from them. That was in October of 2007.
Okay.
The list itself has been around since 1922. Wow. So next year will be our 100th year in business. We'll find a way to mark that occasion, obviously.
Sounds like a party ready to happen.
What's that?
Sounds like a party ready to happen.
It definitely is. So I don't know how to best celebrate it. We're pretty active in a bunch of different groups, so I don't know how to make it one party. But so that was almost 14 years ago. One of the biggest things to me, I mentioned the associations, really getting involved in all of them has been kind of the key to our growth. Right after that purchase, we went through the Great Recession, but we grew through it just because, our previous ownership wasn't really out there promoting the business and the brand. And as a young guy, I was obviously, working pretty hard and hustling as much as I could. And here we are today.
So as we talk about Forwarders List and we talk about Law List, tell us a little bit about the business itself.
Yeah, so we are a law list, or sometimes I say a legal directory. One thing we are not is a legal network. So I learned a couple of years ago, so people weren't taking meetings with us because they thought we were a network, specifically in the debt buyers group. So,
sure.
We need to be a little bit better maybe about the distinction that we don't handle your portfolio, right? You don't give it to us and then we manage the law firm. So we are a resource for debt buyers, creditors, legal networks. We work hand in hand with them to help find the best law firm to handle their work. We do commercial, consumer, some subrogation, replevin, anything to do with creditors' rights law, essentially. We have small mom and pop law firms in remote areas, and we work with most of the bigger law firms in the industry. So there's, sort of two sides of the coin for us in terms of commercial and consumer. There are some people who do both, but it's pretty rare. So my world is really kind of split between the two.
Okay.
So on the client side, again, we help them find law firms. We vet our firms, obviously. And typically the biggest indicator for a client is whether or not the law firm handles a similar client, right? Mm-hmm. So if you come to me and you have credit card paid for, or it's third-party commercial debt, whatever it is, and I have a law firm in that state or states that handles a client that's very similar in profile, if they're being audited especially, chances are if they can pass Adam's audit, they can pass Gary's audit, kind of deal. So that sure. The client roster typically speaks louder than anything I could tell them on paper. Mm-hmm. And then on the law firm side, law firms pay us an annual membership fee. So there's no referral fee. There's no, somebody found you through forwarders list and now your rate with us is going to change. So almost like we're not a trade association, obviously, but
you're a connector of people. You're a hub that allows people to come together and have that discussion. But you really, when you talk about the two sides, you were talking about commercial and creditor, in the conversations that I've had with you in the past, I feel like there's also a split in your business between kind of the sender or the forwarder and those that are receiving those files, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's, an important thing for us to kind of discuss. So, as a debt buyer, right, that has, had a lot of discussions with you, what's the value for the debt buyer, the creditor, the legal network? Like, where's the value for them? What are they looking for from you?
Right. So there's a few things. So one is we call it a bond. It's technically an employee theft policy, but for some reason before my time, it was branded as a bond. So we have an insurance policy, and many people watching probably have their own employee theft policy, or it's part of their insurance. So if your bookkeeper or one of your employees somehow were to take money out of the business, you are covered as an owner. Mm-hmm. The law firms have this coverage, but they are excluded as owners, right? So if you and I are partners in a business, we can't insure so that if we steal money, the insurance company is going to make us whole, right? I know it sounds silly, but
it makes sense, right? Because it's intentional fraud at that point, and it's a lot harder to protect against.
Correct. So our policy is with Great American Insurance, and they break out employee as a special definition. It says the owner of the member law firm. So if Adam Parks Law Firm LLC is the member and you're the sole owner, if you were to take client funds, the client could come make a claim on our policy. Okay. And I won't bore the details, but it's 3 years of coverage from the date of placement. It's $1 million a year. And it's free. So again, our revenue only comes from the law firm memberships. There's no cost on the client side. So the bond is probably the first part of the benefit to the sender of business, being the creditor, debt buyer, legal network, law firm, whoever's sending business. Okay. The second thing is, we screen and vet our firms. We don't sort of put a bar on compliance because we have commercial business too, and they're not subject to FDCPA or CFPB really for that matter. So it's not like we say, oh, we're establishing a baseline of certain policies and procedures in the firm. But we know that if you're on the consumer side, you need somebody who's going to do things the way you need them to do it. So we would never recommend somebody who's not equipped.
Makes sense. It's hard to set a standard bar for everybody, right? Because every creditor, every debt buyer has their own requirements, and at the very least, you guys are kind of skimming the surface. I mean, to me, it sounds kind of like an RMAI certification, right? It's like the lowest common denominator, and then everybody kind of builds upon that, so to speak.
Right. And sorry to interrupt. When the CFPB came out, some people asked us if we were going to kind of get into like certifying or a program, and you asked around the clients, and nobody could agree on anything. So it just sort of became, I thought it might be an opportunity, but it didn't really make sense. I don't think we're the right vehicle for that, so we didn't do it.
It's a lot of risk.
What's that?
It's a lot of risk.
Yeah, right. And then it's like, a lot of people were saying, well, then we're gonna have to audit the auditor. So if you put something together and vet it, then we're still doing the work. So what's the value?
Correct.
So we screen and vet the firms, and then part of it becomes once your legal network is established, we're still part of the process, right? So we're still talking to you regularly. If you send work to 35 firms around the country, it's not like we stop talking to you because you bond your claims with us and you have a set network, right? We're constantly interacting with our clients to make sure their firms are performing. Another thing that's kind of a little hard to articulate, if a client, and the law firms probably don't want to hear this, but if a client's having an issue with the law firm, we're going to ask other clients who work with that law firm if they're having the same issue, right? Because it could be a one-off deal where, something in their platform's not connecting or whatever. But if 7 clients are all having the same issue, there's a bigger problem there. So sometimes we're like another set of eyes and ears for the clients in terms of what the law firms are doing and how they're behaving. If there's a change in the law firm internally, we might become aware of it before the client does, although in today's world, it's not really always the case. So we become a resource that will alert you of something that's going on in a state or with a law firm.
I think that's fantastic, right? And so, I mean, clearly there's value from the sender's side. Let's talk a little bit about the law firm side as well. When it comes to actually receiving this business and working on accounts that are being forwarded or, really connected by you to the creditor, what's the value for the law firms themselves?
Yeah, so I mean, we can be a requirement. So a lot of clients require that their firms be a member because they want that bond coverage or insurance coverage that we talked about. But the net effect is that they're also going to pick up new business. So, on any given day, we're getting a number of phone calls or emails requesting a firm in the state. Sometimes it's to add another firm. It's not that they're getting rid of their existing firm. They just have more volume. They need somebody else. So we're constantly referring the client to law firms, which means the law firms are receiving the benefit of a new introduction or referral. And, sometimes it doesn't pan out, right? Because they go with another firm. And sometimes, many times, and the more sophisticated clients don't want us to pick a firm for them. They want us to give them some options. So we'll vet and source the firms in a given state and say, oh yeah, in Florida, I think there's these 4 or 5 firms look like they could handle your work and be effective at it. And then they might do their own homework, right? They have their own people, obviously, who do this kind of stuff. And then they'll come back and say, oh, give me an introduction to 2 or 3. And then we'll talk to them. And then we connect those dots. And then, I'll follow up 3 or 4 weeks later, make sure they had enough time to talk and see how that conversation went. So the law firms will benefit from those incoming referrals. Sometimes it can work in the opposite. So a firm could say, hey, I would really like to do the work for this client. I hear that they're looking. Do you know them? And if we do, of course, we can contact the client and sort of say, hey, are you open to this introduction? Would you like to talk to them? They think they're a good fit. We host events. We do a lot of dinners. We organize golf around some of the conferences. So, and candidly, we don't always exclude non-members, but obviously you're going to be more plugged into what we do if you're part of our group.
Makes
so
sense.
Networking, essentially access, is all part of what they get out of it.
Well, it sounds like there's value for everybody involved, right? Whether you're a sender of business, you're a receiver of business, there's a lot of value. And I know through the conversations that we were having at NCBA and just the conversations that we have in general, you're kind of moving into some new areas about creating content. And obviously your events and everything are very popular. And I greatly appreciate the opportunity to participate in some of those dinners. You guys definitely know how to have a dinner. But let's talk a little bit about kind of where you're going from a content creation standpoint, because I know this is something that you and I have been talking about doing together through my Receivables Info channel and just the wealth of knowledge that you have available at your fingertips.
Right. Yeah. So for me, I'm a handshake, sit down, let's have coffee, let's have a beer, let's go to dinner, let's go to lunch, let's golf. I mean, that's my brand. That's how I do things. But COVID obviously really changed things. And in the back of my mind, I was always thinking about webinars and that kind of stuff, but it's not me. I'm not a tech person. I'd rather sit and talk to someone. So we're moving in that direction. Webinars are certainly a part of it. We've always done a newsletter, but it's, I think it's fair to say it's pretty basic. So we're looking to boost to that. We have a new website in development right now. Hopefully people watching this will come back when the new one's ready, because The
I'll be
current
happy
site
to
is,
share that with everybody as
yeah,
it becomes available, right? Like,
yeah,
I love a good website.
right. It hasn't been a driver for us, but the landscape's changing. So it's time. We've invested the money. We're pretty close to it being ready. So yeah, so with content, we're looking to just create a digital brand that somewhat matches or complements what we do in person and on the phone with folks. And that's obviously one of the things I've talked about and what we're doing today. Webinars seem to be kind of the easy one for us because we can serve up, okay, you're talking about Hunstein now, right? We can get 3 great speakers to talk about this case from a defense firm perspective. Maybe we grab a debt buyer, maybe even a creditor. We can put those people on a screen for an hour and they'll be experts to talk about it. So I don't like to talk. It's not my favorite thing. I'd rather host or put the right people in place. So I think it's going to be largely around bringing in other people who are smarter than I am in their space to talk about certain issues.
Well, I look forward to partnering with you, Gary. I mean, we've always had great success in the things that we've done together, all the things that we've been able to accomplish on the membership committee, and you have been a staple of that committee. I mean, as long as I've been participating, which I swear it's got to be like 8 years now. So, I really appreciate all of the time and energy that you put into the associations, the things that you're doing for the industry on the whole, and just your general outlook in terms of creating content and finding the right people to share information, and to be another resource for this industry in a time in which digital resources are becoming just that much more important.
Yeah, correct.
So I want to thank you for, joining me today and taking some time to have this chat. I mean, you and I had this discussion a few years ago because I just really had to understand, the baseline of what is Forwarder's List and how are you guys doing things and where's the value and all of that. And clearly you guys add just so much value to the industry on the whole, and clearly not just to the receivables management industry, but to really everything in the consumer and commercial spaces. So I really want to thank you for taking the time to participate today.
No, it's my pleasure. One thing I would add that I forgot to touch on was
Sure.
we've also gotten a little bit involved in the vendor space in the sense that when you get asked a lot about who the best process servers are, or who could build a website, or who does asset location, or early on, I would just make the connection, right? But it got to a point where you need to monetize this somehow, and so it's not a big part of what we do, but we think it's important, and especially from the law firm perspective, they tend to be the ones who ask if we know, like who else is, how are your firms handling this? Who do they use? So we become a resource too to say, we're hearing really good things about this group, or lately this group seems to be doing the best job. So that's just one other thing that I kind of forgot to mention.
No, and greatly appreciated because I think it's incredibly valuable, especially with you having everybody's ear and the trust, of your clients to be able to have those frank discussions and collect good information, and then use that to better the businesses of your other clients and other people around the industry. I mean, you and I do very similar things in different sandboxes, and a
Yeah,
lot of respect for you and everything that you have built.
likewise. Thank you for having me. And thanks for the continued friendship and involvement. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Your friendship is important to me. For those of you that are watching at home, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them below. I'll be tagging Gary. You can reach out to him directly on LinkedIn or through YouTube. I'm sure that we are happy to answer any questions that you may have and to connect you to anybody that you ultimately need or want to be connected with. If you have any other topics that you'd like to see me cover or other guests that you'd like to see me interview, also feel free to leave a comment below and I will do my best to create that content for you. But in the short term, Gary, I look forward to seeing you at the next conference because it's always a pleasure to get to hang out with you.
Absolutely. Likewise, Adam. See you soon.
Thanks.